everyone. Hello, and welcome to this week's forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. I'm your host, Joshua Washington, Executive Director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, and I'm joined by
Olga Mitchell Washington, Speakers Bureau Chief here at the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, as well as one of our board members. It's good to have you this evening.
It's good to see you all. That song you heard was our theme song. That one is called The First 7 Miles by Randy Sandoli. If you want to check out his music, it is streaming on all platforms. His most recent album is called Simka and has a lot of other really cool tunes on there as well. So check that out. Check out Randy Sandoli, great music. If you've never heard of us before, if this is your first time, if you're here and you're like, who the heck is this group? I just happened to scroll by and I'm looking at them now. Go to our website, ibsi.org, and you can read up on our history, our content, our mission, what we do, why we do it, all that good stuff. You can join our Substack. Go to ibsi.substack.com, join our newsletter, Africa Israel Weekly. You can check out our articles. We have podcast episodes. We have other video content on there as well. We have premium content. If you really like our stuff and you really like the information, you want more, you can become a paid subscriber if you just scan that QR code right there. And if you know who we are and you love us and you appreciate what we do, you can become a legacy builder. What is a legacy builder, Olga?
A legacy builder is somebody who recognizes and appreciates the work that the Institute for Black Solidarity does and wants to support us. We are a nonprofit organization reliant on the generous donations of our donors. We are very grateful for our big donors, but it is the little consistent donors on a monthly basis that ensure that we are able to pay salaries, we're able to give our volunteers, most of whom all of us are, stipends, that we're also able to travel the country. The need for the work of IPSI has increased exponentially. We were around before October 7 doing a lot of great work, speaking into a void that exists. As you can appreciate, post October 7, that has become even more important. And so the ability to ensure that we're able to get to the places that we're asked to come and educate, as well as to really keep up the operational work of what we do, is very much a result of the legacy builders. So on a monthly basis, if you can commit however much you can, $5, $15, $25, $50, scan the QR code in front of the screen now and become a legacy builder.
Yes. As a matter of fact, if you see that, you see the QR code or the website, if you go ahead and do that now, we had a couple of people 2 weeks ago. Someone DM'd us to let us know that they had become legacy builders, and then someone else who told us that they've been legacy builders for the past couple of years. So we greatly appreciate, as Olga said, our consistent givers. It helps IPSI to move. It helps IPSI to function.
One thing I just quickly want to note is that legacy builders are for anybody and everybody, irrespective of where in the world you live. We know that we have got supporters, legacy builders as well, in countries outside of the United States. Yes, it is only if you donate within the United States that you will be able to benefit from the tax deductibility of your gift. However, do know that outside of the country, your gift makes as much of an impact as the gift of those who reside here in the United States. So wherever you are, become a legacy builder.
Yes. And you can also support us by visiting our merch store. As you can see, we are twinning today.
That's my first time wearing it on this show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've worn the others.
These are our IPSI shirts. We have others. You've seen us wear our Legacy Builder shirts. We have an Iron Lion Zion shirt. We have water bottles. We have mugs, journals. We have our book that our founder and CEO wrote, Zionism in the Black Church. So you guys check out our merch store, scan that QR code, and you can have something to show for your support of IPSI. We would greatly appreciate that. I think that we even have magnets you can put on your refrigerator, which is pretty cool too. All right, so that is that. Just a few announcements. Actually, we're just kind of recapping this week because there was a lot that happened over the past couple of weeks. First of all, I, along with our CEO and founder, we were in Sacramento, California last week on Sunday. On Monday. Well, it was a 3-day conference, but we were. I think our CEO spoke Monday morning, and I was there doing some music that evening. It was an education conference that was hosted by a few different groups. One of the organizations that was there was the Jewish Institute for Liberal Values. Um, uh, the name's escaping right now. There's another organization about empowered education. A lot of these groups were we partnered with a few years back when California had its hearing on whether or not to implement the ethnic studies curriculum in California. That's where I got to meet some of them, and that's where some of them got to know who I was because different ones of us spoke at those hearings. It was kind of brutal. A lot of the speakers were in favor, and a lot of them were very organized. You had these different, you know, Free Palestine groups and these other, Black Lives Matter groups, Asian American groups that were pushing for this very divisive, destructive curriculum. Not only for it to be taught, it was already taught in California public schools K through 12, but in order to make it mandatory to graduate high school, it's already at the college level, and so we connected. Some of us connected through that, and we've been doing work together ever since. So this was the first conference of its kind. Organizations that I've never heard of from all over California, different faith backgrounds. There are Hindu groups, there are Muslim groups, and all in the same with the same ideology of we can't allow this to continue on in our schools. These things to be taught that continue to lend itself to some of the issues that we're going to talk about today. So we had a great time. Our CEO spoke on a panel. I was there to do some music for one of the dinners, which was a lot of fun. And I also got to interface with a lot of the leaders there, so that was great. And so we got more updates coming soon. Actually, this week we have a few meetings with with some of the people we met there, so we'll be giving you guys updates on that as well. Also, yesterday, our Speakers Bureau chief was in Chicago. Tell us about that. How fun was that? You were staying with us, Greg.
I was. Stand With Us hosted their 13th annual Chicago Gala, and I was privileged to host the event as the MC. Stand With Us is one of IPSI's partners. It's also one of the partners of an organization that I'm involved in South Africa. I almost said IPSI. It's called Daisy. Daisy. And we are just so grateful for Stand With Us is work. They've been in the business, the Israel education space for the last 23 years, and they've been a great friend to the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. So I was there where they honored some incredible young women who have taken a bold, courageous stand on university campuses in the fight against anti-Semitism. And also the keynote speaker was Shabbos Kettenbaum, who many of you who are in the space may be familiar with. He is one of the plaintiffs of the case that is going to trial, hallelujah, against Harvard University for how Harvard shockingly, totally morally devoid, left its Jewish students, I'm going to say this bluntly, to the wolves, to the anti-Semitic wolves, to the wolves of Jew hatred post October 7. And so they are suing the university for failing to protect the Jewish students in terms of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. He was an incredible speaker, and it was a very wonderful time had.
Awesome. That's incredible. So you had the privilege of hosting that.
Well, I served as the MC. Yeah.
That was sorry. Yes, MC. Yes. And awesome. We got to see our good friend Peggy Shapiro. Right.
Love Auntie Peggy.
Shout out to Auntie Peggy for all your tireless work. And literally, I say tireless. I mean, I don't even know if Auntie Peggy really sleeps. But she does such important work, both for the Jewish community and for the greater community of Chicago, which, maybe one of these days soon, maybe we'll have her on here to have her talk more about that, because she's definitely a pillar in the community. Also, last weekend as well, it was kind of a whirlwind weekend for our family, but I was also in Boston for the Christians and Jews United for Israel Genesis Award, where, again, this was more of a musical weekend, but it interfaced with our advocacy. I was there to share some music, some original music, and I got a chance, the privilege of hearing Mr. David Nekrutman speak. If you don't know who this man is, you need to know. He's kind of a pioneer when it comes to specifically Israel education, and he's working on some initiatives now, along with Olga and other partners of ours, to really to help the next generation. And he has a really great. I don't want to get too much of the details, but it's gonna rock. It's gonna rock things.
I mean, I know you don't want to get into too much of the details, so let's just give a little bit.
Okay, just a snippet.
Part of his work is working with Christians in helping them understand how to read the Bible. The Bible, let's not forget, is a Jewish book. And the ability to read it in a way that allows one to actually get to the meat of
Mm,
what's being written is something that I've started to embark on.
mm.
And it has been truly a transformative experience. And we're very grateful for David's leadership in this space.
Absolutely. And one thing he did say, and I will say this because he was the recipient of the Genesis Awards this year, and he gave the keynote speech. And we talked about this afterwards. His speech was very powerful. He spent probably about the first maybe more than maybe 60% of it just giving us his background and how prominent he is in the Christian space and how his journey kind of led him to what he does now, which he works primarily with Christians. He works with Christians more than he works with Jews. And that's what he's told us over these past couple of decades. So he's been in this game for a long time. And so he's talking about his relationship with this person, that person, how that started, and how he wasn't sure. Can I do this? Let me talk to my rabbi. My rabbi said it's okay. Okay, I'll do it. And then it goes to like, okay, this is my experience at a Pentecostal church. This is my experience on a regular Sunday. I was like, what are these people doing? But now he is such a figure in the church, and he has such a deep understanding of the Christian faith that he is able to be in those spaces and with the great level of sensitivity. Reminds me a lot of our CEO, but on the other side of that, right? So our CEO, who's a Christian pastor, who's able to work in the Jewish space, is the same type of thing. And when he got toward the end of his speech, the mood changed a little bit, and he said what Olga and I were talking about earlier. What she also a conversation she had in Chicago as well. He was saying that for the churches who said that they stand with Israel, right? They have these events for years and years, waving Israeli flags and having these standing with Israel events, nighttime Israeli events, whatever it is. He said, I'm just paraphrasing. He was deeply disappointed in the lack of response to October 7th. Not the church broadly, because sometimes if we're not in something we generalize. He's deeply involved with Christian leaders all across the country. So he's talking about specific tons of churches that he knows that have hosted him, right? That he's worked with and beyond and beyond. And he said he was deeply disappointed in the lack of response. There's so much silence, he said. And he said, if you claim to stand with Israel, he said, this is what hit me hard. He said, I live in memory. He said, I live in memory. And he said, so as a Christian, when you say that you believe in Jesus and you believe that Jesus is your Messiah and you follow him and you love him and you serve him, just know that he's a member of my family. And I mean, you could hear a pin drop. I mean, it was, and he wanted to let that sink in. And unfortunately, that has been the sentiment, again, not just Christians in general, but we've been hearing from our Jewish friends about the Christians who have been rah rah Israel for these past few years. This is not our words. These are their words. They're saying, I know some people are like, people have not even so much as reached out to ask, how are you? We got to do better, you guys. We got to do. If you're a Christian and you're a Zionist and you're watching this, if this doesn't apply to you, then fine. But if people, reach out to them and tell them we kind of suck right now in this area. There are friends are feeling abandoned in the time where they need us the most. So that's something that really I think we could chew on and talk about and do better.
Our CEO did, if I'm not mistaken, a Truth to Power Live
Mm-hmm.
episode a few weeks ago where he actually, without going into all of the details there, go check it out on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, on Rumble, on all our social media platforms, how not only the churches, but also Christian Zionist organizations
Mm-hmm.
allowed October 7 and everything that's happened since, particularly the rise in anti Semitism on our college campuses, to happen on our watch, right? And how there needs to be more of a focus on repenting, because we cannot say one thing. Joshua talks about the silence of many, which is very, very true. And then there have even been people who have said rah, 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 but when it came down to actions, zero,
Mm-hmm.
nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And October 7 was such a defining moment in terms of standing for righteousness versus evil, but also stepping up and being courageous. I'll end on this note in terms of my contribution to this point. I'm oftentimes when I find myself struggling with something, whether it's a lack of courage or wanting to say something that I believe will convict others and is what the Lord would have being said, but I'm nervous or I'm scared or I'm not even sure how to do it, we'll go to the story of blind Bartimaeus. Blind Bartimaeus speaks about, well, the story of blind Bartimaeus is he's sitting on the side road, won't go into all of the details there, but what's interesting is when he asks Jesus for something, and Jesus was like, okay, I'll give you. And then he acknowledges that he was lacking faith. And so he was
Mm,
saying, Lord, help me with
mm,
my unbelief.
mm.
What a beautiful thing that we can go to the Lord and say, Lord, help me with my lack of courage.
Yeah.
Help me with the fact that I don't even know who to reach out to. I don't know what to say. And he will. He gives grace for those that are willing to come to him to say, I don't know what to do. And so I need your help.
Absolutely. No, that's perfect. I mean, that is, again, for Christians, that message should really encourage, because exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you lack, you really, Lord,
Yeah.
help. I'm really bad at this, so like I need help. And I'm telling you, those are to me, I feel like those are the most honest prayers, those are the best prayers, because
Mm-hmm.
God can say, okay, cool, I can work
Yeah.
with that. You're telling me I see this gap here and I don't know how to fill it, and I guarantee you that God will show you how to fill that gap. Um, absolutely. So that was and I also had the privilege of meeting, obviously under terrible circumstances, but one of the, if you remember in Rafah, there were 6 bodies that were found. There were 6 hostages who were executed by Hamas, or by also just by Palestinian just people there. One of them was Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, who was an American Jew who was in Israel at the festival, I believe. Um, his aunt and uncle were at the event. His aunt spoke, which again was just sobering in that, um, this was not a one-off event, right? There are still hostages, and also you never really get over something like your son, your nephew, your grandchild, someone who's you're supposed to go before them, right? You never get over that because it's unnatural. So here, his aunt and uncle here talking to us, taking the time out to talk to us about what kind of a person he was, and how much he was an ambassador for peace. She shared a story of Hirsch. He was a soccer player, and a lot of his friends were German soccer players. He would sometimes play on their team, and he was, even though there was opposition, she talked about his grandmother saying, "Oh, how can you do this? How can you? What about all the stuff they did to us?" And he said, "Look, Grandma, we got to move forward. Basically, we got, yes, that happened, but we can't move forward. We can't have peace unless we're able to move forward." And not only did his words really were not only were they really heard, but once the news went out that he was executed, the whole team came to his family's house just to pay their respects. And imagine how that could be for your Jewish grandmother, who remembers what happened in World War II Germany, to have all these German athletes come over to your house just to pay respects to your son. And so, again, it was a very sobering event, and we're just happy that they ask us to come and just be a part of it every year, so far, and we hope to be a part of the next one. Lastly, this is coming up. This is next week, on Monday. I thought it was Sunday. Oh,
Sunday.
Sunday. Okay, this says Monday, but it's supposed to be Sunday. Yeah, that's why. So on Sunday, this coming Sunday, Olga and I will be in New Jersey, at the Federation. And I think, do we have a graphic up there? I think if we do, you can put it up there. But we'll be doing, I think, our first event to get speaking together, right?
Yeah.
Our first event speaking together on November the 10th. If you're in Jersey, if you're in New York City, if you're in that area, from Philly or whatever, scan that QR code and register. You guys, it'll be great to see you. We would love to see you and hang out with you afterwards and all that kind of stuff. But go check it out. You can go to jfnnj.org/visionary voices. We'll be having a good time chatting, maybe going through one or two couple of disputes that we might have about how we met and all that kind of stuff.
It's not about our story.
I'm
It's
just
about
kidding.
the
I'm just
Black
kidding.
Israel relationship.
Absolutely. But it'll be a good time. We'll have a great time, having good discussion, and furthering some of the things that we've been talking about here on Monday nights when you guys are tuning in. So I hope to see you in person. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. So we've spent a lot of time taking you through where we've been and also where we're going, just to show also that your donations as a legacy builder have impact and enable us to answer the call across the country. So
Mm,
thank you, thank you, thank you. IPSI is about not just doing the talking, but doing the work as well.
yes. With that too, I want to add one more thing to that, and just as a reminder, this is absolutely since October 7th, but even before that. But I would say it's ramped up, obviously. There's been a much larger need, a bigger need, a growing need for IPSI in the Black community specifically. And so that those requests have been increasing quite a bit. We've been asked to more and more go to whether it's churches or political spaces that are predominantly Black, or events where people will come out and say, "Hey, Black people will come out and tell us, I've actually been following you for a while. I know you don't know who I am, but for the past couple of years, you really actually helped change my mind about what's going on." And so IPSI does take great. We don't take that lightly, and like Olga said, that is in large part because of your donations and helping us actually get to these places and do these things. And so we will continue to do the work. And for those who do support and continue to support IPSI, we want to say thank you, and thank you for helping us and enabling us to do this job. All right. Okay. So we got a couple of things to cover today. Olga, why don't you take this first point? Is that it's a really, I think, in all the stuff that's going on in the midst of everything that's happening, just a really kind of an important and also heartwarming piece of history that we're living right now. So, Olga, why don't you share that with the people?
One of the claims that is central to the anti Israel cause is the fact that Jews are not indigenous to the land, and so their presence there is there as colonialists. Now, those of us that know our history and that also know the fact know that one, Jews are indigenous to the area. Jews are from Judea. That's literally where their name comes from. And there was in February an embassy that was created by representatives of indigenous people from all over the world. It is called the Indigenous Embassy. And it is an incredible place. Look them up. They had a symposium in Jerusalem last week where they came together as leaders of indigenous communities from I've gone blank, Pan Atlantic Islands.
I don't know.
So the islands near Australia and New Zealand. I'm sorry, I don't know why
Oh,
I've gone
Oceanic,
blank on that.
Oceanic.
But also from Canada. And what was very exciting for me was to see Indigenous leaders from South Africa. Now, the most Indigenous people within the Black community in South Africa are the Khoisan, and the King Regent, as well as the Princess of the Khoisan Indigenous people, were present at this symposium. So here was a plethora of Indigenous people from across the world coming together at the symposium, speaking truth to power about what is indigeneity, why and how is Israel indigenous to the land, and showcasing their support as Indigenous people for the Jews as Indigenous people to that land. Yeah, so it was a very powerful event. The embassy also speaks about creating a lot of material, and more specifically, very well researched academic material that will bolster the fact, right? Not just a narrative, but a fact that Jews are from Judea and Israel is very much theirs.
I mean, so this is very significant, and just like you said, the claim, one of the accusations that gets thrown against Israel is uses the South African narrative, right? So the fact that these indigenous peoples, but especially indigenous South African, the Khoisan people, the Khoisan, we met them with our ambassadors last year when we went to South Africa in December.
Yeah.
And which was a powerful thing for them to, I think for some of our ambassadors, you think South African, you think of Black South African, you don't really think there are an indigenous group separate to the Black South Africans that are there. Not that the Black South Africans are colonizers, but
they migrated.
They migrated, right? They migrated from different parts of the land over of the continent over time. But there are people who are indigenous to that land who make this claim on it. That's huge. I was going to ask you, what is this reflective of the broader indigenous population of South Africa? Are these people just notable exceptions? What is this gesture?
Well, we've covered this a few times on this particular forum that, people, when they hear about South Africa, they immediately think anti Semitic because of the
Mm-hmm.
actions of the South African government, more specifically the African National Congress, in taking Israel to the International Court of Justice. Yes, whilst that is true, we have showcased, and this is just one other example of the fact that the ordinary South African is not anti Semitic. In fact, they love Israel. They recognize Israel as a Jewish state. They recognize the Jewish people. They recognize that anti Semitism is a threat and it's something that we need to combat. And so here are a group of indigenous people. I mean, just several weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
we also
Mm-hmm.
had the Shembe, who are from the Zulu tribe, and the Zulus are very much also indigenous to
Mm-hmm.
Southern Africa, right? A specific part of Southern Africa. And
Mm-hmm.
they were there showing their solidarity as well as their support for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so here, once again, are these multiple South African groups of their own, but we've also seen it collectively standing up and saying, we love you, Israel. We stand with you. We support you. We understand that there is this narrative and this libel that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It is false. So yeah, I'm very grateful and very thankful for the fact that more people are speaking up and doing something to showcase their support.
Absolutely. And I think that's important for us, for those of us who are Israel advocates, to understand is that the vast majority of the people in South Africa, in most of Africa, right, um, are Zionist. At the very least, they aren't involved at all in the Middle East conflict. I mean, that at the
No,
very least, they just
okay.
don't really care about the modern politics. But
because they've got their own stuff
they
to
got
worry
their
about,
own
right?
stuff
Keeping
to
the
worry
lights
about.
on, feeding
Right.
the families. I mean, Africa's got her
They
challenges.
got their challenges. Absolutely, and yeah, I mean exactly. That's why. I mean, I said it before. We talked about it. How one of the even more radical than the ANC, one in South Africa once called for a boycott of Israeli products, and the response from the people was like, "Okay, how are we gonna? We're already struggling to eat. You're gonna tell us to not buy foods from over here where there's food. Like, are you gonna feed us then? I mean, how is that?" And I thought that was genius, and I wish that response went further and went more viral because that is the general feeling of the people. And so yeah, so that's awesome. Um, thank you, Olga. I want to pivot and just discuss with you here and with you people here. By the way, feel free to comment here. I see once again Pastor Matrilla Hall. She is incredible down in the Atlanta, Georgia area. She's one of our IPSI pastors. Shout out Pastor Matrilla Hall. I hope the video is working better for you. I heard that there was some lagging. So for those who are watching, they say the audio is going well, but the video was lagging. It might have been a internet thing, so I like cut off some of our Wi-Fi's in here. So hopefully that. Let me know if that works. If that's better. If you can see better. We do apologize for that. Now I want to talk about this for a minute because this is tomorrow is election day. A lot of us have voted, or some of us have voted early. I know we voted early. Tomorrow's election day. Someone said it's kind of like we're all collectively in the waiting room waiting to see what this pregnant woman is about to have, right? What child is going to be this or that. So that's kind of where we are right now. Things tomorrow could be a very different. We could see a very different America.
Tomorrow, Wednesday.
I'm sorry. So Wednesday. I'm sorry. Like late tomorrow night, early to Wednesday morning, will really determine some stuff for our country. But one of the things I want to point to, and we've addressed this from a couple of different angles. Our CEO addressed this from a couple angles in Truth to Power Live, his radio show, which will give you a clip about something else later on. But there are some other angles too that he's also addressing. We want to focus on one of those here today, which is recently in Michigan, you have a contingency, a group of Muslim community leaders who came out full swing in support of Donald Trump. Now, just stay with me here, okay? Because it's not an endorsement of anything. I'm just hear what I'm saying, okay? So before I say more, let's show the clip. So, producer, if the clip is there, if you show that video, and then we'll go from there. If not, then I'll keep going. If we have it, okay.
For decades in the United States, the left has been hard.
No. Sorry, yeah, not that one. Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that in a minute. I shared a clip, but maybe it's not working. There's just a short clip on an Instagram link just of the speech. It was a short speech. You can go on Instagram and you can find it. We'll link it also for you. One of the Muslim leaders speaking is that he's at a hearing and he's saying that we're tired of this and that and the other. We want our economies better. We want our business to thrive, and we think that our best bet is to go with President Trump. And so this is not the first time that a group of Muslim Americans have come out in support of Donald Trump. This also happened in 2020, but it's ramped up even more now. And I bring this up to say a couple of things. So one, it's just something to note, right? But two, for those who are in this space or even out of the space who are watching, who are conservative, you have to be careful not to make the same mistakes that were made on the left. And this is what I mean by that. Within this contingency, we know that President Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem. You know that President Trump has done a lot of great things when it comes for the to the Israel-America relationship. Not all of those Muslims are in line with President Trump's views on Israel. You still have a couple of different groups within this group. Some who are genuinely just supportive, who see themselves as American, who want, who are tired of all this, all this backwards ideology being taught in schools and all this trans indoctrination and cutting girls' breasts off at 14, all that stuff. They don't want that, and so they're voting for the person they think is going to end all that. And then you have another group of Muslims who are hedging their bets, who have the same goals, who have the same ideology as the Council on Arab-Islamic Relations. We talked about our Arab-American relations, Islamic-American relations, who have the same goals as the Muslim Brotherhood, who funds a lot of these organizations in the U.S. Their goals haven't changed. They just see that a Trump presidency could happen, right? And so they're kind of hitching their ride to that so they can continue their agenda. The Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 28, I believe. Mm-hmm. And they have the long game. We talked about President George Bush a couple of weeks ago and how Nihad Awad was standing right behind him. He's the head of CARE. While President Bush gave a speech 6 days after 9/11 saying Islam is a religion of peace, while people were still burning in the buildings, in the rubble, right? Nihad Awad is still the head of CARE. He celebrated October 7th. He was at a speech at a dinner. He was saying that Israel does not have the right to defend itself. And what he saw was this glorious, picture of resistance. Again, this was him after October 7th, right? So nothing has changed. And you have people in that camp who see Trump as the person they need to hitch their ride to. So, as a matter of fact, if you have that screenshot of the tweet, there's another link. It says case in point. If you have that producer, if you put that up there, this is what I mean by that. If this tweet pops up, it's a tweet of a Muslim who is in support of Donald Trump. I guess he's a registered Republican or whatever he is. He's voting for Trump this year. He's very outspoken for Trump. Very anti-Zionist, very anti-Semitic. Had said some very disparaging and even racist, borderline racist things to racist things to Floyd Mayweather, the boxing champion, telling him that he was a house Negro because he was in support of Israel. This guy is a full-on Trump supporter and is anti-Zionist as they come. Our CEO tweeted this. Just recently, he decided to try to clap back at our CEO. Didn't work so well for him. And you can go on Twitter and see that from there. But this guy, if you can read it, here, I'll blow it up so I can read it for you. This is what he says to Floyd Mayweather. He says, as Malcolm X said, there are two kinds of Negroes, house Negroes and field Negroes. You definitely house one, BITCH. So he calls Floyd Mayweather a house slave because he stands with Israel. Okay, this guy is not on the left. He's not a professor at Columbia University. No, he is he's on the conservative camp. So my advice to the conservatives is please do not make the same mistake that the left has made in being silent about it because you guys line up on these other issues. You have to call it out loud. You have to remove it from your spaces when it creeps up. You have to. Otherwise, it doesn't matter who's in the office. We're going to have the same crap on our hands that we're having now. Yes, it is way more institutionalized on the left. Absolutely. It has the potential to be just as institutionalized on the right. So that's my advice to you is great, but do not let you give them a pass to do all this kind of stuff that you were fighting against when it was on the left. You have to fight against it even more so when you see it on the right.
I mean, one of the things that I continue to be grateful for IPSI and its work is our calling out anti-Semitism, whether it appears on the left or whether it appears on the right. It is a cancer that impacts everybody who will allow it to. Yes, we see it more predominantly active on the left, like Joshua said, but it does not mean that it is not immune to those on the right. We've discussed Tucker Carlson by way of an example. We've discussed Candace Owens. And whereas it is factually correct, we are about Israel and the facts and the truth, it is factually correct that a President Trump administration, and we saw it historically a few years ago, is stronger for the Israel US relationship, and as a result also for the Israel-Africa relationship. There will still be a need, particularly for Christians, for Jews, for those who believe in prayer, and even those who are activists and who speak out, to hold President Trump accountable and ensure that he continues to surround himself with advisors who will ensure that his focus remains on being a true friend to Israel and to the Jewish people, keeping him accountable. Otherwise, God forbid, we may have a result where, as a result of various endorsements or influence or various other factors, if he were to come into power, we'll reflect on the last 4 years and be like, oh, what happened there? You know, even if Kamala Harris comes into power, there is going to be even a greater need for those who identify themselves as speakers of truth and who identify themselves as lovers of Israel, because we understand the moral obligation to do so, to be speaking up, to be holding our leaders accountable, to be ensuring that they are faithful even to the laws. There are laws that are in place that should be being enforced in relation to anti-Semitism here in the United States, but also our relationship with Israel that are just not, right? They're just being overlooked. So whichever way the presidency goes after tomorrow, there is a responsibility on us to continue to speak truth to power.
Absolutely. Speaking of truth to power, now we are going to show you this clip from Truth to Power Live, the latest episode, which aired yesterday at 4 p.m. Check it out, you guys.
For decades in the United States, the left has been harboring this anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, institutional, systemic vibe. When we talk about the capture of our academic institutions and the anti-Zionism that's taught there by faculty and the money that floods in from Qatar and China and all the curriculum and all the Students for Justice in Palestine, who do you think controls those institutions? It's not the Heritage Foundation. It's not the Republican Party. It is controlled wholly by the left. The anti-Zionism, which often has all the other leftism stuff, the socialism, the communism, the anti-Western, anti-democracy, it is part and parcel of what has become leftist politics and academia in our country. This is why you have a women's march that becomes an anti-Zionist march, a Black Lives Matter march that becomes an anti-Zionist march, and on and on and on. Why? Because they see it as an intersectional cesspool of what has to happen. If you are a good social justice person, you're against Israel. That's been true for a long time. What's my point? Arguably, no other ethnic group is targeted with anti-Zionist propaganda like Black America. This goes back to the 60s. Why do you think Israel's enemies call it an apartheid state? Because Black South Africans suffered apartheid, which was a scourge on the earth. So you keep calling Israel an apartheid state, you are delegitimizing its existence. And what gives you fodder? You focus on Black South Africans, let Yasser Arafat take some pictures with Nelson Mandela, boom. Zionism is racism. Why did the United Nations pass that resolution in 1975? Because racism, Jim Crow, apartheid. You see the theme here, right? We are going to exploit what Black people actually went through and lie and say that that's what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. Boom, that's what you get. This has been the tripe that has been pushed, not just on the Black community, but using the Black community to show other people that anti-Zionism or being pro-Palestinian is a good social justice warrior. Within the pro-Israel space, when there are overtures made to the Black community, it's almost always exclusively to progressive Black people. It's fine. You should be able to reach everybody. I know of organizations who explicitly won't even talk to Black conservatives or libertarians. Somehow conservative or libertarian even means somehow they're kind of defective, that if they're not card carrying leftists or progressives, how can they dare stand, or how are they able to? If I had $1 for every time one of my more liberal Jewish friends told me that abortion is a Jewish right, not Jewish right, Jewish principle, going, what do you mean? What does that have to do with being Jewish? A person, whether they are pro-life or pro-choice, what does it have to do with which religion? And for some of them, someone who's actually pro-life should not even approach the Israel thing because somehow they're disqualified. I'm making a point here. There's a problem when you use the Bible to justify Israel's existence, and then that same person goes to the same Bible and tells them that life begins at conception. Oh, you're a right winger. Okay, see, that's how the game gets played. So either we're going to use the Bible or we're not. Either we pick and choose, because you know what Israel's enemies do? They pick and choose. They'll say stuff like, Israel went in and slaughtered the Canaanites. They committed genocide. Therefore, they have no legal right to the land. You never heard that before. I've heard that millions of times, right? What gives them the right to go in and that, oh, well, God has this covenant with Abraham, and he told Abraham this land, blah, 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 blah. So what you're doing, you're going to the Bible to explain how Israel came, whether you consider yourself religious or not. There are Black Americans now, multi-generational, who are having very deep conversations. They've been having these conversations in the barbershops and the churches anyway. But now it's all in the open because Obama comes and starts tongue lashing folks. Black men need to vote for you. You don't want a woman to be ruling over you. All this kind of foolishness, talking out the other side of his neck. And I shared you that video of folks bringing him all the smoke. There is an opportunity here to actually have a Zion-Israel conversation while many in the Black community are sorting through and sifting through what they've been told by the Democratic Party. Alan Dershowitz himself said a few weeks ago, Israel is no longer a bipartisan issue. A lifelong card-carrying Democrat stood up and just spoke the truth, that this anti-Zionist systematic thing is very much lodged in what has become the UK labor situation with the Democrats are concerned. Oh, no, I'm a Democrat and I stand with Israel. You are becoming more and more of the minority, whether you want to admit it or not. And those of you who've watched this podcast or have heard any of my lectures anything before, you know, I'll bring the smoke to the right as well. We've been sounding the alarm on a rising anti-Semitism on the Christian right in this country. But that does not mean that for decades, Israel has been getting dragged. Jews have been getting dragged. Jews are white and privileged. That's the intersectionality crap, the critical race theory crap, all those things that our kids are being force-fed, that the diversity, equity, inclusion means white people are evil. And because Jews are white, they are the most evil, and they're all rich. Jews are white and rich, therefore, they are the problem. These kids are learning this. And who's teaching them? It's not right-wingers teaching them that.
Truth to Power Live with Jimmy Study Washington.
So again, that was...
For decades...
So again, that was Truth to Power Live with Dumisani Washington, which is on Sundays, every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. You can tune in. It's on YouTube, Rumble, all the streaming services. Check it out. And, you know, there's a lot. It's a long program each week. And he goes through many different topics. But yeah, truth is truth. You know, again, tomorrow's election day. For those who are voting tomorrow, when you go to the polls, for those who are here, who support Israel, who are Zionists, who for you, this is a very crucial issue. Make sure that you're being sensible with your vote. Make sure that you're voting in those interests. Just look at the Look at the resumes when it comes to Israel. Look at what's been done. Look at what's been said. Look at who's been with who's been taking pictures with who, and um, and who we've already had in our State Department already, who came back during this last administration, who's you know who were in the classrooms just about 10 years ago and now who are in the White House helping make policy. Think about that, and vote accordingly. What are we going to say, Olga?
I mean, you said a lot. So I think the only thing I'll add is I am personally tired of playing catch up. I'm personally tired of acting like a fireman, running to put out fires with a hose when we have opportunities to prevent the fires from even taking up, when we have the opportunity to ensure that anti-Semitic events don't happen, or they're able to come down, or that we're able to even like stop the rot or decrease the rot. And so may we use whatever your values are, and we're on a platform in relation to Israel, so let's highlight the Israel one. May we use our values to ensure that we are not creating a scenario where several weeks from now, several months from now, several years from now, we're like, oh my gosh, we need help, we need help, we need to put out a fire. Christians come together and fast and pray, and then we look back and be like, okay, but you enabled this. You gave the mandate for all of this foolishness, for all of this mess to happen, right? So let's look at the facts, like Joshua said. Look at the resumes. Look at what's been happening, what's not been happening. Feelings. There's a place and a time for feelings, and it is my humble submission that when it comes to elections, whether it's here in the United States or in other parts of the world, your feelings don't matter. They really don't matter. It is the facts, it is the policies that really should be the determining factor in terms of how you vote.
Absolutely. So please, ladies and gentlemen, just use the old noggin. All right, use the old noggin. Now, so a couple of quick things. I want to bring it back just for a moment because Olga said something in the beginning, and I want to make sure that for those who are just tuning in or have only been on here for about 10 minutes or so, we are the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, and this is what we do every Monday at 8 p.m. We do lots of other things as well, in-person events across the country. We're getting ready for 2025 already with our pastors events, which we'll be having pretty much every month of 2025 in different parts of the U.S. We'll be down where Pastor Matrilla Hall is. We'll be up in D.C. We'll be in California. We'll be in a few parts of California, Chicago, Detroit, all that stuff, and having these intimate conversations. We had a pastors event in DC a few weeks ago. That was just powerful. There were pastors who knew us and a lot of pastors who didn't know who we were, but they came because their friends said, come on. And by the end of the event, there were some tears that were had. People were coming up to our CEO and Pastor Roger Cheeks, who's with the International Christian Embassy of Jerusalem. He's
International Fellowship of Christians
sorry,
and Jews.
International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, IFCJ. Just telling them we didn't know a lot of this stuff. Thank you so much for illuminating this. There's so much pressure on us to say something now, and we don't want to just speak out of turn. And so these pastors are really appreciating it, and we're keeping them in smaller groups so we can actually have these discussions with them. They can actually talk back to us, and we can go back and forth and all those things. So we're planning that next year all across the country. We cannot do any of these things without your help. We cannot do any of things without your help. So for those who are legacy builders, thank you so much. And for those who watch and are thinking about it and go back and forth, I'm telling you now, become a legacy builder. You can set up a $10 a month donation, $10 a month. If everyone watching this right now did that, that would actually put IPSI in a much better place for 2025 as we get ready to do the things that we're doing and to do it with a higher level of excellence. What is that? Excellence. What is excellence? Like you're leaving with excellence or something.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Wow, that's maybe not that, but with a higher level of excellence, and with more resources at our disposal. So what were we gonna say? Okay, go ahead.
I mean, just two things. One, you can be assured, I should say, that your investment is going towards efforts that not only have impact, but are also sustainable. We took 20 ambassadors on a journey of learning, as well as trips to Israel and South Africa. It was a 2-year program, and those ambassadors are still involved in the community doing the work. So IPSI's work, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, is not just about the talking, it is about the doing in a manner that is impactful. If you're wondering whether you want to be a legacy builder because you aren't sure about the commitment, that's okay. Take your time. We encourage you to do so. But do consider giving a donation of some sort today. A donation of some sort will go a long way to help with the work that we do.
Absolutely. And yes, our ambassadors still work with us. So in their communities, but also in even planning these pastors events. We have several ambassadors who are helping us plan them all across the country, and then we have ambassadors in a lot of those cities who are there to receive us and do work on the ground before we get there. It's been a huge level up for IPSI. And it's definitely been something that's been enriching for them, and they've been on their own journey since our time with them these past 2 years. So we want to say thank you for that. And again, like Olga said, even if you can't give every month, a one-time donation would be amazing. So ibsi.org/donate. We would greatly appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to give you a little hint of what we're going to talk about next week, because it kind of falls into the theme of what Olga just said, which is let's actually stop the fires before the whole house burns down, right? You see the stove caught fire. Let's do something about the stove now, right? Let's not wait until it spreads to the whole kitchen and then the ceiling starts falling apart, and then the room on the second floor falls into the living room, and then we go, oh my gosh, house is on fire. Let's do something about the stove. And so one of the examples of us failing to do something when we should have, there's now a group called Faculty for Justice in Palestine. Remember Students for Justice in Palestine? There's Faculty for Justice. And I promise you, I haven't even looked into this all the way yet. I guarantee you there's some of those faculty were a part of Students for Justice in Palestine. Now they're teachers at the school, and now they're part of FJP. So our failure to stamp out what really should not even be on campus in the first place. SJP gets its funding from foreign countries. SJP gets its funding from the Muslim Brotherhood. Some of these SJP chapters had students on campus that weren't even students. They were your average, Arab Muslim that just lived in the area that was on those campuses terrorizing these children. That's all illegal. That shouldn't happen. That should not have. They should have been sued up the wazoo and not here. But now we're at a place where they are all over the place. They have tentacles all over the college campuses across the country. And now you have the Faculty for Justice in Palestine, which only exploded and grew right after October 7th. That is strategic. And that is another reflection of failure on our part to really deal with it. And when I say deal with it, I don't mean deal with it by putting pro-Israel students on campus to counter them. That doesn't do anything but make for good, photo ops. I'm talking about let's actually tell the university, if you continue to allow this on your campus, we're going to sue you because they're getting their funding from countries that hate America. That should not happen. That should not be there. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more, and especially, like I said, in the whole in the analogy of let's put out the fire before the whole house burns down. How can we now, even though we're really far down the road, how can we now clean this up, really clean it up, right? To where we're not dealing with it anymore, to where it's done. We've moved on to other bigger and better things than combating these knuckleheads who shouldn't be here in the first place, right? How do we actually deal with it so that we can change our mandates from combating anti-Semitism to something much better? I mean, I don't know about you. It just seems exhausting every single day. I mean, it's like whack-a-mole. How can we move on from whack-a-mole to actually creating a better future in a real sense for our children, and for them to take up a different, mantle than what we have? How can we do that? So we'll be talking about that a lot more next week. Did you have something you want to add?
I don't. You hit it on the nail. I look forward to the discussion next week.
Yes. So thank you all for tuning in. Again, this is the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. This is our weekly forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. We're here every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on all the streaming platforms. So YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Rumble. I said Twitter, but it's called X now. Facebook, everywhere. So please let your friends know we're here next week, and we're looking forward to seeing you all. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Don't forget to vote.
Vote.